I should have worn my high-heel boots that I had on. Well, let me just tell you, I believe this is our largest crowd in the campaign. And I'm so grateful. This is our first event after a great night in South Carolina. And I want you to believe something. I know how difficult things may seem, but I want you to believe this, because it's true. Our greatest days in this country are within our reach. They are within our reach. But we have to take care of business right now. The last 8 years have been a very bad time for this country because we have been led by people that have tried to change this country. Barack Obama, when he was elected, he wasn't just interested in fixing America's problems. He wanted to make us more like another country. He wanted America to be more like other nations and other parts of the world. We don't want to be like other countries. We want to be the United States of America. And so after 8 years of damage, we cannot afford to get this election wrong. And if Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton were to win this election, we will have gotten this election terribly wrong. Because Bernie Sanders is a socialist. Now, usually when you say that about someone in politics, they deny it. Bernie Sanders says it in his commercials. And I don't understand why you would be a socialist and run for office in America. There are dozens of countries in the world that are socialist countries. If you want to live in a socialist country, you should move to a socialist country. The other candidate is, you may have heard of her name is Hillary Clinton. Well, Hillary Clinton is not qualified to be president of the United States. She took intelligence information, sensitive information, and she put it on her email server because she believes that she is above the law. I am convinced that her plan was she was going to win an election and then she would pardon herself. No one is above the law. And that irresponsible behavior disqualifies you from being president. But she's also disqualified from being commander-in-chief. Because on the 11th of September of the year 2012, 4 Americans lost their lives in the service of our country in Benghazi. And she knew that they lost their lives because of a terrorist attack. And yet when she spoke to the families of those 4 Americans, she lied to them. She told them that they had died because of a video. And I believe that anyone who lies to the families of Americans who have lost their lives in the service of our country can never be Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America. So we have to win this election. And how do we win this election? First, we win it by coming together.
Right.
Now, we're still going to have our primary. It's a smaller field this morning than it was yesterday. But we're going to continue to work hard in this primary. We want to do well here, and that's why I'm here to ask you for your vote. Because we need to win, and we need to come together. Eventually, if we're still fighting against each other in October, in September, we are not going to win. And not winning doesn't just mean the other party's in charge. Not winning means that all of these policies that have haunted us for 8 years, many of them become permanent. If we lose this election, Obamacare is permanent. If we lose this election, the destruction of the military continues. If we lose this election, all of these unconstitutional executive orders stay in place. So we must win this election, because if we lose this election, Justice Scalia will be replaced by someone who believes that the Constitution is a living and breathing document, that it can mean anything you want. And so we must nominate someone that can bring this party together. And that's why I'm asking you for your vote, because if you nominate me, I will bring this party together faster than anyone else in the country. And it's not just enough to come together. We have to grow this party. Which means we have to take our message to people that don't vote for us now. To people that have been told for over 2 decades that Republicans and conservatives don't care about people like them. You know the story that they tell them. The Democrats and big government is good for the working people, and Republicans only care about the rich. Well, we don't have anything against people that have been financially successful. We celebrate financial success. But we fight for the people that are trying to make it, because they're the reason why America's special. Every country in the world has rich people, and we're glad that we have rich people. We celebrate that success because they earned it. But what makes us different are the millions of people that know they're never going to be rich. They're not trying to get rich. When you become a school teacher, when you become a nurse, when you become a police officer or a firefighter, you know you're not going to make millions of dollars doing that job. What you want is to make enough money to be able to own a home and retire with dignity, and have enough money to enjoy your weekends and take your family on vacation and save to send your kids to college and live to see all of your kids grow up to have a better life than your own. That's called the American dream. That's what we're going to fight for when I'm the president. We will take our message to people that are living the way that I grew up. Because my parents never made a lot of money. My father was a bartender at a hotel. My mother was a stock clerk at Kmart. She built aluminum chairs at a factory. She was a maid at a hotel in Las Vegas. And yet my parents, although they never made a lot of money, they were successful people because they lived the American dream. And America, when we are in charge, is going to be a country where parents can still do for their children what my parents did for me and your parents did for you. We will unite this party and we will grow it. And when we do, we will win this election. And then we have a lot of work to do. What does it mean to be a conservative in the 21st century? First, it means we are going back and we are going to follow the Constitution of the United States of America. A Constitution that says that you have a constitutional right to live out the teachings of your faith in every aspect of your life. A Constitution that says that you have a right, according to the Second Amendment, to protect your family, your property from criminals and terrorists and anyone who will threaten you. And a Constitution that says that the federal government is supposed to be a limited government. There is not a federal answer to every problem in this country. In fact, there is not a federal problem to most of the problems in this country. Many of the problems in this country cannot even be solved by government at all. They have to be solved in our homes, in our communities, in our job as a mother and a father, as a husband and a wife. It is in the family where many of our answers are. And we are going to return to a government that empowers the family instead of empowering government agencies or government bureaucrats. And if there is a government solution, it is likelier to be at the state and local level. That's why we don't need a Department of Education at the federal level, because we don't need an actual school board. When I'm in the White House, we're going to return to limited government and we're going to return to free enterprise. It is the only economic model in the world where you can make poor people richer and you don't have to make rich people poor. It is the only economic model in the world where you can lift everyone up without tearing anyone down. And if people have any doubt whether free enterprise works, and if people have any doubt whether limited government works, then walk 2 blocks. Because the reason why Nissan North America is headquartered here is not because you raised taxes, but because you lowered them. Free enterprise works. And that's why we need to fix our tax code so we can compete again and roll back regulations and balance our budget by saving Social Security and Medicare and fully utilize all of our energy resources and repeal and replace Obamacare once and for all. Limited government, free enterprise. The third thing we're going to do, we are going to once again keep this country safe. Today the world is a dangerous place. You have a lunatic in North Korea with nuclear weapons. He's a lunatic. People say, why do you call him that? Well, look, he is the son of a dictator, which means he's never been disappointed. He's never been told no. He's never been put in timeout. He's a lunatic, but he has nuclear weapons. The Chinese government steals our inventions. They hack into our computers. They're now practicing how to blow up our satellites. They're rebuilding their military The largest military expansion in human history is what the Chinese government's doing now. And they're taking over the South China Sea, the most important shipping lane on the planet. Vladimir Putin is sowing instability in Europe and in the Middle East. Iran is going to get $100 million of sanctions relief because of Barack Obama's deal with the Ayatollah. And they're going to use that money to build up their military. They're going to use that money to one day buy or build a nuclear weapon. And radical Islamic terror, because that's what it is, radical Islamic terror is spreading. ISIS is the most dangerous radical Islamic group in history. They are not, as the president described them, just a bunch of guys on the back of a pickup truck with guns. It's a dangerous group that has affiliates in over a dozen countries, that burns people alive in cages, that takes little girls 8 and 9 years and 10 years of age and auctions them off as brides. And in the face of all of these threats, Barack Obama is gutting our military. Gutting our military. Our army will soon be the smallest it has been since the end of World War II. Our Navy will soon be the smallest it has been in a century. And the Air Force will soon be smaller than it has ever been in our history. The average age today of an Air Force plane is 27 years old, which means the planes are older than the pilots. These defense cuts are reckless. It is the first thing we should be spending money on at the federal level before anything else. And if I am President of the United States, we are going to undertake a Reagan-style rebuild of the U.S. military. Don't say polo, please don't say polo. I hated that game growing up. I really did. Rubio! We're going to have a real war on terror when I'm president. Not this war that's going on now that isn't working. A real one. How does that work? Here's how it works. The best intelligence agency in the world is going to find the terrorists. The best military in the world, which we're going to rebuild, is going to destroy these terrorists. And if we capture any of these terrorists alive, they're not getting a lawyer, they're not going to Manhattan for a court hearing, they're not coming to Tennessee, they are going to Guantanamo. And we are going to take care of our veterans again when I'm President of the United States of America. If you are a veteran or you have a loved one serving now or in the past in the armed services of our country, would you raise your hand so we can thank you unreal? Thank you so much. Thank you. My brother's a veteran. He traveled with me to South Carolina. He was a Green Beret in the 7th Special Forces, 68 to 71. Some Green Berets here, maybe. He's 21 years older than me, Fort Bragg, yes sir. 21 years older, so he's not here today, but I get to tease him now because I have the microphone and he's just in the crowd. So when I introduce him, I say, that's my brother. I know what you're thinking, but no, that's not my dad, that's my brother. 21 years older. Well, my brother, when he was in the Green Berets, he jumped out of a plane one day as a practice jump and he knocked out his front teeth. So every few years he has to go to the VA to get a dental claim done. And every few years he has to fight through it. They ask him, how do we know this really happened in the Army? He says, well, it's the only time I jumped out of a plane. So in our own family, we've seen the issues at the VA. In my state, literally 1 out of 4 calls to my office is a VA claim. The other day in USA Today, I think it was Tuesday, the headline in USA Today said this: calls to VA suicide hotline went to voicemail. It's unreal. No one's going to be fired for that. No one's going to be held accountable for that. When I'm president, they will. There are good people at the VA, and they work hard. We're not talking about them. There are good people at the VA. There are good VA hospitals. But if you're not doing a good job at the VA when I'm president of the United States, you will be fired. And here's what else. Here's what else. When I'm president of the United States, our veterans will be able to take their VA benefits to any hospital or any doctor that they want to go to. And by the way, I'm honored that so many of our veterans, when they come home, they don't stop serving. Many of our veterans become police officers and firefighters. So I want to just take a moment to thank the police officers and the firefighters for what they do for us every single day. Let me lump in the teachers. I have 3 teachers in my family. I don't know if they're here today, but I want to thank teachers. Number 1, because I mean it, and number 2, because it makes Thanksgiving a lot easier. So I want to thank the teachers. So here we are. Every election is important. Every one of them matters. But this one's more important than most. From the beginning of this campaign, that began in April of last year for me, I said that this election is a generational choice. Because most elections are just a choice between competing political parties. But this election is so much more. In this election, the question before you is not just the names on a ballot. The question we must answer is, what kind of country will America be in the 21st century? We know what kind of country it's been for the last 2 centuries. It has been the most exceptional nation in the history of all mankind. I believe it began at our very founding, when some extraordinary men, who all happened to live at the same place at the same time in this then colonies of the British Crown, signed their names to a Declaration of Independence that was nothing short of a death warrant. If your name was on that document, it meant your family, your life, your property were all at risk. They signed their name to that document. That document reminds us that our nation was not founded on a political principle. America was founded on a spiritual principle. The principle that all men are created equal, because we are endowed by our Creator with a right to life and to liberty and to pursue happiness. Our rights do not come from government. Our rights do not come from the Constitution. Our rights do not come from the law. Our rights come from an all-powerful God, and the job of our government is to protect those rights. But it is this belief that we are all equal. It is this belief that our rights come from our Creator that set in motion a series of events that in this nation led to the greatest nation in the history of all mankind. For here we embraced individual liberty because we believe that God created man to be free. Here we embrace free enterprise because we believe God created man to fulfill their dreams and their potential. Here we embrace a republic because we believe that the job of our leaders is to serve the people and not the people serve the leaders. And the result is this extraordinary nation, a place where our Judeo-Christian values formed our society into a strong one. We became the most generous people in the history of the world. Americans give more to charity than most governments do. Not because the government makes us, not because you get a 60% write-off on your taxes, but because we are taught by our faith, we are commanded by our faith to care for the less fortunate, to feed the hungry and clothe the naked and house the homeless. And the result is an incredible nation. Now, when you are born and raised in a country like I have been, in this one, and you do not know what life is like in any other place, I believe sometimes it's easy to take for granted how special America truly is. But one of the blessings I have had is that I was raised by people that knew what life was like outside of America. And so they always taught me how special life was in America. My parents were both born on the island of Cuba. They came here in 1956 with nothing. They barely spoke English. The first words my father learned in the English language was, "I'm looking for work." My father had not gone to school past the age of 9. His mother died 4 days shy of his 9th birthday. And so he had to go work, and he would never go back to school. He would work for the next 70 years of his life. My mother was one of 7 girls raised by a disabled father in rural Cuba. My mother says her and her sisters never went to bed hungry, but she's sure her parents did many nights. When they came here in 1956, they didn't know anyone. They had few skills. They had big dreams and not much more. And life in America was not an instant success. Years later, my parents admitted to me they struggled. They were discouraged. They wondered out loud whether they had made a mistake. They even contemplated at one point going back to Cuba. I thank God every night they did not. They stayed. They persevered. And less than 10 years after they came here with nothing, my parents owned a home. My father was a bartender on Miami Beach, and they owned a home in a safe and a stable neighborhood. Years would go by, and through hard work, my parents were able to retire with dignity and with security. But the greatest achievement my parents had in life was that they were able to live, they lived to see all 4 of their children live a life better than their own. Their life had meaning and it had purpose. Their sacrifices meant something because they were in the one place on earth where if you work hard and you sacrifice, not only can you achieve a better life, but you can give your kids the chance to be everything you always wanted to be, but never could. And the reason why I say that is because although that is my story, that's not just my story. As Americans, that is our story. There are a lot of people here today. Only a few of you have I ever met in person. I don't know your personal story. And yet I know this. Because you're Americans, you, like me, are just a generation or 2 removed from someone who made your future the purpose of their lives as well. In this country, we are all just a generation or 2 removed from someone like that. Who are Americans? Americans are the descendants of go-getters. Americans are the descendants of people that came here, whether it was 2 centuries ago or 2 years ago, because they refused to live in a society that told them that they could not be who they wanted to be. America is the descendants of slaves who overcame that horrifying institution to claim their stake to the American dream. America is a nation in which in our veins flows the blood of people who refuse to accept the limits placed upon them by a stale and outdated society. This is who we are. This is who we've always been. And this is who we must fight to remain. What we fight for now is that America remains the kind of country where my story and yours is still possible. That is what's at stake here. If we stay on the road we are on right now, we will lose that. The American dream will die. We will still be a rich country. We will still be an important one. But if we lose the American dream, we will no longer be a special one. Because as I said before, every country has rich and connected people. But only here can millions of people that do not come from privilege or power achieve extraordinary things. This is what makes us different. And this is what we must now fight to preserve. If we embrace big government, we will lose it. For in the societies where government dominates the economy, it is the same people who keep winning. I challenge you to look at these countries where the government dominates society and the economy. It's the same families and the same names and the same companies decade after decade. Because big government helps the people who have already made it. Big government is good for the people who can influence government, and everyone else gets left out. And so what we must fight for now is to ensure that that American dream, that it doesn't just survive, but that it reaches more people and changes more lives than ever before. And my fellow Americans, that is what we have a chance to do right now. I know that times are tough, but as Americans, we have been here before. In fact, we have been here many times. You see, one of the reasons why America is so special is because for over 2 centuries, each generation did what they needed to do. This is not a country that ever had it easy. It was founded by declaring independence from the most powerful empire in the world. This is the nation that confronted 2 world wars and a Great Depression. This is the nation that survived the Civil War. This is the nation that survived the 60s that divided us generationally over Vietnam and regionally over civil rights. Each generation has confronted great challenges, and each one rose up to the challenge of their time. Now our moment has come. Now our time has arrived. And I take inspiration from the decision our nation made 36 years ago this year. 36 years ago, I was still a young child. I was only 8 years old, but I was old enough to know that things were not going well. Even as a young child, I could sense that America's optimism had ebbed. I could sense that our influence in the world had declined. I could sense that our confidence in ourselves and in our people was at an all-time low. And then this nation elected a phenomenal president named Ronald Reagan. And just as important as what he did, Reagan influenced the whole generation by what he believed. Reagan always believed that America's greatest days were always in front of us, because he recognized that while our government had big problems, our nation is not a government. America is not a government. America has a government, but America's our people. And who are the American people? They are the people that will get up tomorrow morning early to go to work. And they're raising their children, and they're volunteering in the community, and they're donating to charity, and they're raising their families, and they're putting their kids in the right schools, and they're opening up new businesses, and they're working hard at the place that they work. That's America. Our people are still a great people. We just have a bad president, and in 2016 we are going to fix that. We are going to fix it. And so in a race where you still have many choices, I'm asking you here in Tennessee to vote for me. If you vote for me, I will unite this party. If you vote for me, I will grow this party. If you vote for me, we will win this election. The Democrats do not want to run against me, but I cannot wait to run against them. For me, you will have a president that will never shy away from strongly and firmly stating my beliefs and the traditional values that made us great. If you vote for me, you will have a president that will never be ashamed to say that all human life is worthy of the protection of our law. And if you elect me, I will be a president for all Americans. Even the Americans that don't agree with me. Even the Americans that don't like me. Even the Americans that protest against me. Even the Americans that say nasty things about me on Twitter, I will cut their taxes too. When I am your president, I will never pit you against each other in order to win this election. I will never ask one group of Americans to be angry at another group of Americans so that I can win. Because if you want to be president of the United States of America, you must love the American people, even the American people that do not love you back. We have a lot of work yet to be done in this campaign and in the years to come. But I want to leave you with this. If you elect me president of the United States, this generation will do its part. If you elect me president of the United States, we will return to the principles that made us the greatest nation in history, and we will apply those principles to the challenges of the 21st century. And I want you to know what history will say about this generation when we do what needs to be done. Here's what history will say of us. It will say that we who lived in the early years of this new century faced a difficult and rapidly changing world. And we almost got it wrong. We almost got it wrong. But then, like all the Americans that came before us, we remembered who we were. And we rose up to the challenges, and we solved our problems, and we embraced our opportunities. And when our work in this generation was done, our children became the freest and the most prosperous Americans that ever lived. When our work was done, the American dream did not just survive. It reached more people and changed more lives than ever before. And because we did what needed to be done, the 21st century was not just as good as the 20th century, the 21st century was better. And we were the authors of a new American century. God bless you.